I came in the fall of 1991, and I came to be the new director of the Center for the Study of Women in Society. I had applied for the job earlier in the year, not expecting to get it. They were searching for a sociologist. I'm an anthropologist, but I had reasons why I wanted to interview for and hopefully get the job. So I applied, I got it, and I arrived in '91.
And what were your reasons?
I had been very lucky early in my career. I worked at the Duke UNC Women's Research Center. That was in 1982 through all the way into '96, early '96. That was my first job out of graduate school. And that brought me into the world of women's research centers really early. The National Council for Research on Women, which was the umbrella organization of women's research centers, had national meetings, and I, as the project director from that center, attended the meetings and was very excited about the world of women's research centers, and I learned a lot about different centers. I was one of three centers in the South of the United States, not the global South, and we all felt, let's just say, marginalized from what was then called the New Englandization of women's studies, which was everything being centered in Boston, New York, and primarily focused on white, middle-class, Euro-American, and European women. And the Southern centers had sort of a political agenda of greater inclusion, particularly focused on race and class in the United States. And so that had been a really important part of my early professional experience. I went off and became an assistant professor in a women's studies department at the University of Massachusetts. And when this job became available, I saw it as an opportunity to work with another one of the centers that was kind of, if you will, on the periphery, but to me, at the center of transforming women's research, women's studies, feminist scholarship from a primarily Anglo-European, white, middle-class focused enterprise to what it is increasingly becoming. So I took the job, or wanted the job, to be part of continuing what I saw as a critical political and intellectual intervention in the field of women's studies. As a programmatic focus and an intellectual project was really born in the 70s for the most part in the United States, but pretty similarly I think in many other places. And there were really, really pitched struggles during the 1970s within the women's studies scholarly world around two things in particular: sexualities and race class. I would say as the decade wore on and into the 80s, the sort of global issues became more also part of that. Where's the center of the field going to be? So that was both in women's studies as an academic enterprise, but also in a lot of feminist organizations. I worked in, my doctoral research was in the women's health movement, and all of the struggles in our clinic were the same struggles that were happening on a very different level and at a different tone probably in the academy. So into the 80s, there was a real, I don't know if a fight for the soul of women's studies is the right word, but there was definitely a politicized sense of, okay, now we've entered the academy, we've got women's studies programs at more and more institutions, we're beginning to have these women's research centers, which by the way was a project really helped along tremendously by the Ford Foundation, which funded a lot of the early women's women's research centers, and they were clustered in the Northeast. The Ford Foundation funded the 3 centers in the South, not here, but they did fund a number of different research centers. So the field was tumultuous, exciting, expanding, interdisciplinary, but also with a really clear political edge, and I think varying connections between academic and non-academic feminist projects. So, other parts of the women's movement. Mm-hmm. This center had those battles all went on in this center during the 1980s, just like in many other centers. That because there was some really good leadership under Joan Acker and some of the other people that came before me, the center of gravity of research here was certainly paid attention to class. Race, I think, was newer, and it was a very white faculty and a very white center. That didn't make it extremely different from a lot of other women's research centers, but maybe it was a little worse, or a little whiter, perhaps because of the location in Oregon. I think there were lots of really interesting scholars. They were located in a lot of different departments, a lot of different schools. But what I felt when I got here was that we, as the center, as CSWS was primarily a funder of individual research, of a lot of really good individual research in all of these different campus locations. And we would have some programs, and it wasn't only that, but because we had this amazing endowment which set this center apart and really put it on the map, and was one of the reasons I wanted to come, because I figured we wouldn't have to constantly struggle for basic operating money. I felt that we had the opportunity at CSWS to be more than what we called at the time a foundation. It's almost like we were a little mini internal foundation supporting individual research. So it was lively, it was robust, but it was fragmented. Should I go on? Yeah. So I had identified that early even in the interview process. And so when I got here, my goal was to try and get a group of people together to sort of engage in a strategic planning process to sort of assess who are we, what are we doing well, what are our strengths, what could we be doing, what are the opportunities to do more in different kinds of things. I would say there was that met with a mixed reception. I think a lot of people thought that was a good idea. I think there were people who wanted to kind of hold on to the older model of CSWS. But it wasn't particularly like a fight or anything. It was just, people were afraid that if we over-invested in collaborative research or projects or center-identified research as opposed to the center funding individual research, that there would be less revenue for the very, very necessary goals of supporting faculty and graduate student research. So that was the environment when I got here, was trying to figure out this center that's been strong and has made many really important accomplishments. What's the future of it? What could we do that could raise the volume, expand the picture, bring more people in, really promote collaboration? Because a lot of people were doing their own scholarly research. And there were some teams, but we didn't have RIGs then, we didn't have research initiatives. The center was located in the Vice President for Research's office, in terms of that's who we reported to. We were called a research center. I felt we were more a research facilitation center. And I had visions, not just, when I say I don't want to sort of say it was me. It was, there was a group of us that wanted something different, something where there was research actually identified with CSWS and not just with CSWS funding. And that is kind of the next step. That was the next step in CSWS's evolving history. I was really lucky in that I felt like there was a lot of work that had been done before I got here to sort of legitimize the project of feminist scholarship, but that didn't mean that it was universally recognized as super important, cutting edge, or I think the administration, at the time we had the largest endowment on campus, and that bought us some respect. We helped fund the sort of foundation because they took chunks of money from our endowment to sort of fund their, and I tried to work on decreasing how much they took of our interest earnings. But it was 1980, when I got here it was 1980, it was 1991. We'd been in existence at that time since '73. So it wasn't new, it was 18 years old or so. But I don't think the center had garnered certainly the economic, fiscal support of the institution. And I think there were still people that thought, why do they have all this money? And by the way, all this money was not that much money, but it was more money than a lot of other places had. One of the reasons why I wanted to move in the direction of center-identified research was that I think while there was respect for CSWS as an entity, I don't think there was full appreciation nor the full potential of it being seen as an actual research center. It was kind of like people would constantly get women's studies, the center, and the women's center mixed up. It's like it was all one thing. And
can you talk a little bit about the differences between these three?
Sure. Well, when I got here, the differences were a lot of the faculty who were affiliated with and identified with women's studies also identified with the center. But CSWS was a research center, and we were primarily about the research mission of the institution and of feminist scholarship. And women's studies was an academic unit, primarily at the time an undergraduate teaching unit. Not that people didn't do research, they did, as all faculty do. But women's studies was more the academic unit. We were, like many other places on campus, a research center and institute, which that was our primary mission. And the Women's Center was then primarily responsible for programming for students, engaging students in a wide variety of activities, whether it would be Take Back the Night kinds of programs, or speakers would come in, although we also did speakers and women's studies also did speakers. But it was more student services and student engagement. So they were finally fairly, and some community engagement. Now that doesn't mean that we saw that as a hard and fast division of labor, and there were some struggles over those lines. But that was how I saw it and how a lot of people saw it. And I took a position that was in some ways kind of counter to my political instincts, because I basically said, no, we have to be seen as a research center like all the other research centers, because I felt that our status and our legitimacy required that. Now, at the time, the other research centers included things like, the Institute of Molecular Biology and, the sciencey centers and CAPS and the Humanities Center. By that, I didn't mean traditional research or research for research's sake. I hoped that we would do a lot of research that was community connected, community based, that recognized that what was going on in women's lives was what should be going on in women's studies and in women's scholarship. But I still felt that we needed to be identified on campus institutionally as a research center in terms of our future and in terms of being able to generate research funding and to get the legitimacy we needed.